Hi, John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Welcome to another Black Belt Leadership Master Your Life podcast. I want to take a few minutes and talk about the little foxes. One of the more famous quotes of King Solomon of ancient Israel was this: "Beware the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vine, for our vines are tender branches." Now, this was a reminder to the farmers of ancient Israel who grew grapes for a living to be aware of the little things that could cause big problems. In ancient Israel, vineyards growing grapes was one of the major staples that they would use not only to provide for their families, but it was a means of commerce to trade with other communities and other individuals that would travel through on the caravans. To protect this harvest, they would build walls of stone or thorny bushes to keep away predators. Now, the primary predator they were concerned about were the foxes, who loved the grapes and wanted to help themselves to the grapes at every opportunity. So they would build the barriers to keep the foxes away and protect their crop so that they could use it to feed their families and trade and have that as a tool of commerce. Now, the barriers that they built deterred the larger foxes, but the smaller foxes somehow managed to find their way in. And when they did get into the vineyards, they would wreak havoc. Not being tall enough to reach the grapes growing at the top of the vines, the little foxes would begin to chew at the base of the vine until the vine ultimately, because of it being weakened, would fall to the ground. The small foxes were then able to eat grapes to their heart's content and then run away, leaving the vine damaged and ultimately destroyed so that it was unable to achieve its full potential and continue to bring fruit. Now, our lives are no different. And if we allow the little foxes to come into our lives, we limit our potential. And if we're not careful, those little foxes can ultimately destroy our potential. One of my mentors is Dr. John C. Maxwell. And Dr. John says leaders who are effective are leaders who are disciplined in their daily lives. So I believe it's important that you be alert and aware of the little foxes. And I want you to think about this as we go into the remainder of our few minutes today. Living a disciplined life is learning to say no to the little foxes that can creep into your life. These little foxes can wreak havoc and they can distract you from living a life of significance. Now, there are a number of little foxes we need to be aware of, but I want to focus on three in the next few minutes that we have together. The first of those is doubt. Now, doubt is a little fox that can hold you back from achieving greatness in whatever it is you put your hands to do. Because when you begin to doubt what you are capable of doing, you begin to question your calling, question where you're going, question whether or not you have enough or are enough to accomplish whatever it is, you've now opened the door to settle for second best. When you begin to doubt your ability, you begin to question everything around you. And when you begin to question what your potential is, whether you're fully resourced, whether you are resourceful enough, when you begin to doubt your potential, you have now put a lid, a cap on what you're going to have an opportunity to do. You know, John Wesley was a very famous orator back in the 1800s that traveled and would preach to massive crowds. One day, a reporter came and saw John Wesley preaching before this massive audience in a field. And after it was over, he approached him and asked him to explain why these people would come for miles simply to hear John deliver the powerful messages that he was delivering. And I love John's comment. He said, "I simply set myself on fire and people come to watch me burn." Now, Wesley began a career as a very great orator by preaching to empty fields every day. Because John Wesley knew he had a calling. He had a passion inside of him, something he had to say to make a difference in the lives of others. John refused to give doubt a voice in his life. Even when no one was there to listen, even when no one was there to benefit from what he had to say, he continued to speak what he knew he had to speak. The question for many of us is, we have been called to do something. We have been called to make a difference with someone somewhere right now. Are we making a difference to the one so that we later have an opportunity to make a difference to the lives of many? Mother Teresa started her career making an impact in the life of one. My question for you is, are you allowing doubt to hold you back from achieving your full potential? Are you giving doubt a voice, allowing it to limit you from your full potential and the opportunity to achieve significance in your life. Now, the second fox is distraction. This one can take us off course because it's that little fox that causes us to detour to the left or to the right instead of staying on the path that ultimately leads us to our destiny. Now, that distraction can be a person, it can be a place, it can be a thing. Distraction can even be a thought. It's anything that draws our attention away from being intentional about what it is that we've been put on this earth to do. And when we allow distraction to have a foothold in our lives, we begin to take our eyes off the goal. We begin to take our eyes off where we want to get to at the end of the day. I remember as an athlete running track when we would get into the starting blocks, and our starting coach would tell us as we would get down and we would get into the ready position, when we heard the gun, keep your head down as you begin to drive and get momentum. But the minute you got your stride, get your head up and get your eyes focused on the finish line. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right to see where anyone is on either side of you. That creates a distraction that slows you down. But we were reminded by our coach to keep our eyes on the goal, the prize that was before us. And as a result of that, we were able to achieve our goal. You know, my grandfather was a coal miner for many, many years. And after he retired, he began farming. He was old school, and he had and I wished I had a picture of it, but he had an old mule named Bessie that he would hook up to a push plow. And every day he would get out in his garden and he would work the garden. Every spring he would go out with Bessie and he would till the furrows that he would ultimately go and plant the seeds in that would later become corn and green beans and peas and carrots and all of the other amazing vegetables that came out of his garden. I learned an important lesson about distraction from my grandfather. One day as a young boy, my grandfather took me out into the garden and he had hooked Bessie up to the plow and he said, "Son, I'm going to teach you how to plow a garden today." And he put the strap over me and he showed me how to work Bessie. And I grabbed a hold of the plow. I gave Bessie the signal and she began to plod down the pasture. Now it was my job to make sure that I kept Bessie and my eyes focused on a fence post at the end of the row. And as I'm pushing and I'm watching that fence post, I'm getting really excited that I'm learning to do something neat. I'm learning to plow old school. And then I began to look around to see who all was watching and looking to the left or the right. And I heard my grandfather holler, "Young man, you need to pay attention to where you're going." And I refocused my attention on that post he told me to keep my eyes on. And at the end of the row, I turned. And as I began to look back at what I had done, I began to smile. In my excitement to look around to see what I was doing, to see who was watching, and really feeling like I was the man, I allowed myself to be distracted. And as I looked to the left and as I looked to the right, and I didn't pay attention to staying focused on what was in front of me, that furrow was not a straight line. It zigged, it zagged, it went here and there, and it was not the straight line that my grandfather wanted. Now, I realized that that moment, that distraction for me had become a little fox that took me off my game, that distracted me from where I was going. And as an end of that, end result of that, what I found was that I wasn't able to accomplish what I needed to do as good as I could. Now, the last of the little foxes I want to touch on today is disappointment. This is another little fox that seeks to destroy our willingness to keep going even when things get difficult. You know, when I think of disappointment and overcoming disappointment, one of the greatest examples to my mind was Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was an incredible inventor, but for every invention that Mr. Edison developed, there were errors and trials along the way that he had to go through. Even though he's noted as one of the greatest inventors of all time, he's also known as one of the men who failed more than any other. Because in the effort to create the incandescent light bulb, he failed over 1,000 times. And when asked by a reporter about his disappointment at not being able to achieve his goal and continuing to strive, continuing to learn, yet failing time and time again to create the incandescent light bulb, I love Thomas Edison's response. He told the reporter, "I have not failed. I've simply discovered 1,000 ways not to invent the light bulb." He was able to turn disappointment on its head by causing himself to realize that even though he had failed, there was a lesson learned. It was a way not to do something or not to do it as well. But with each of those lessons learned by the failures and the mistakes that he made, he became a better version of himself and ultimately became one of the greatest inventors ever to live. Now, disappointment is a little fox that can stop us from trying. It can cause us to want to give up on achieving our goals and dreams simply because we stumble or we fall. It's disappointment that can allow us to accept good enough as being good enough when greatness is just before us if we'll learn the lessons of good enough and keep on trying. You know, it's said in boxing that it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down as long as you get up and keep going. And I think that's true in life. It doesn't matter how many times we get knocked down and how many fail. Failure, rightly used, can make us grow. It can be a learning experience. It can mature us, and it can ultimately make us a better version of ourselves. But how many inventions remain nothing more than a dream because of the failure of disappointment? Because you've chosen not to dream big, or because of failure, you stop pursuing that big, hairy, audacious goal that you wanted to do to change the world. You wanted to achieve something of significance because there was something burning inside of you that said, I want to make a difference in my life. And yet, because of disappointment, because of doubt, or because of distraction, that hasn't happened in your life. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can pick up and you can start afresh and anew. You can be aware of the little foxes that are seeking to destroy the vine. And you can tell disappointment, you can tell doubt, and you can tell distraction to take a hike. So, what are the little foxes that are preventing you from achieving all it is that you've been called to do? What are the little foxes that are holding you back from your passion, your calling, your goals, or your dreams? At the end of the day, what is ultimately holding you back from achieving black belt excellence as you pursue becoming a black belt leader in life? If there's something that's holding you back, there's something that's preventing you from moving forward, chances are it's a little fox. Beware the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vine, because those little foxes are holding you back from becoming a better version of yourself. Hey, John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, thank you for joining me. If you haven't had an opportunity to connect with me, you can find me at beablackbeltleader.com. I encourage you to go there and subscribe to the free resources, access our free training. While you're there, visit our Contact Us page, connect with us on social media. Love to have an opportunity to share with you all the different ways we're helping people grow themselves as leaders. Thank you for believing in yourself. Thank you for pursuing black belt excellence. And thank you every single day for striving hard to live life as a black belt leader in life.